and they come back. It may be emotional problems emerge. It may be mental problems emerge, where certain forces start to try to vie for the personality structure. Some of them are within the self. Repressed portions of your own subpersonality patterns, of your own incarnational patterns, those kind of things. Others will be manipulation, because they are the intruders that are literally trying to take over certain bodies. So they want operatives. Like a collective of operatives to do their thing here. We have a lot to deal with here. But we can do it. If people like me can come out and have an audience as good as you, it's actually listening to me and not writing me off as some airhead that doesn't know what she's talking about. So people like that, I get mad. And I want to take the Voyager's books and throw them at their feet. So, did you look in there? Airheads don't write that stuff, excuse me. You know, we're dealing with 15-dimensional physics here, excuse me. And the psychologists would like to say things like, oh, delusional. Who's delusional here? You're dealing with 3-dimensional consciousness. I'm showing you the structure of 15-dimensional consciousness and the levels of mind that correspond to it. And you're going to call me delusional? You know, excuse me, you're missing something. I get really tired. Not for me, because I'm tough. I've been around these cycles a long, long time, and I've been through a lot. But there are people out there, lots of them, that are having encounters, that are having scary experiences. They don't know if they're in their head or outside of their head because of the interdimensional stuff. And they are being totally disregarded by the medical community and the psychiatric community. They're being put on drugs and in wacky words because ETs are real. You know? We need to spread the word and the awareness, to be open to learning. We don't have a lot of time left here. You know, my first expo that I did was the New York City Expo last year. When was that? Do you remember the date on that? It was May of this year, in fact. And for me, it was a disaster. I didn't do my debut the way I wanted to. I got up on a panel with a bunch of PT experts, and one of them started telling us how, oh, the Elohim created us, and they are coming back to guide us into the next millennium. And you just listen to them, and, well, they know more. They have advanced technology. That proves they know more than we do. We should follow them. This is part of the mind control nonsense that's going on. You have half of your New Age people. They're good-hearted people, really trying to reach for their higher identity, having the higher identity hijacked and programmed into something scary. I ended up getting up there and just like, I couldn't take it after a while. Listening to, I really couldn't. It was a disaster for me, I guess. I don't know. I didn't plan it. But after listening to her with her, you know, praise holy Elohim, and the other ones, you know, the other ones are just saying, oh, well, you know, maybe they're real. Yeah, they have metal saucers and things like that. You know, between that, the two extremes, I just get up there and I said, you know, and nobody gave me my turn to talk. You know, and as you can see, I like to talk. So after sitting there for quite a while, I was there for quite a while, wasn't I, before I really got to say anything? And the moderator, he blew his chance because he was supposed to actually let me get my 2 cents and it didn't. I got up there and I said, you know, there's no time for this left. You know, we are in the middle of an attempted mass global mental takeover. And I'm not pitching fear here. I'm trying to get people to pay attention so they can figure out what to do to stop it. Okay? We can stop it. It's not a big problem if you acknowledge the problem. So I kind of made a scene. Without meaning to. It's just another thing showing that I can get passionate about my work because I believe in it. I don't need to do scenes here. I didn't really plan to do that one either. It just came out that way. Where you get very tired of the lower level of consciousness telling you why you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about because I've dealt with intruder ETs since the age of 4. My mother was an abductee. I was an infiltrator. All right? My mother was abducted while she was carrying this fetus. And it was imbued with Zeta coding. It wasn't supposed to be, but that wasn't the original soul plans for things, but it was hijacked. But because of that, I came through with some abilities that they hadn't planned on. I could read their matrix. By the age of 4, I had conscious memory of fetal integration. I remembered moving in with the fetal pattern. I remembered having the fetal pattern manipulated. And I remembered a good portion of my incarnation history. By the age of 4, I couldn't talk yet, but I remembered. That made me very, very dangerous as far as the intruder ETs. I was dangerous, so they wanted to get me under their control. I began physical abductions at the age of 4 at the intruder's hands, where they tried to mess with the gene code to block the memory, and they tried to use the genetic material for cloning at that time, and later they wanted to use it for breeding, because it's a particular gene code that has a high concentration of silicate matrix, which allows for things, if you control it, that you might want, but you just make sure you control it or it gets out of your hands. When I was 7, I was very fortunate that I met the Guardian Alliance. The Guardian Alliance is a very special group. The one most noticeable thing about them, they're an interdimensional, intertime group. They really come from the future, from the year, I believe it's 5,260 AD, something like that. They come to help us here because we're their past. They're coming to change their past. The primary members of the Guardian Alliance are human. They're the original human. They're Taurusine. They're taller than we are. Some of them are about 12 feet tall. They're very beautiful physically compared to, what our race is right now with its mixed gene coding. And they have abilities that we would look at as godlike. But they don't want us to look at them as gods. That's not why they're here. They do believe in a God, in a central creative force and source that they honor and uphold very much. They'd like to teach us about that so we could find that connection in ourselves. But they're not just human either. The Guardian Alliance is a huge group. There's, I believe, over 10 million races represented in that organization alone. And that organization is part of a bigger organization called the Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds. This is huge. The drama we're in is absolutely huge. I was fortunate because they knew me. The Guardian Alliance knew me from other incarnational space-time locations because they had worked with me before. They found me in this time frame, and they saw the manipulation, and they stopped it because they knew why I had come before I even knew why I had come here. I had come to help with this project, to help with this stellar activation cycle. All of us made an agreement to be here. We just forgot it when we came in and the veils of the DNA went down. The Guardian groups are more aware of what we are and who we are right now than we are. They can give us back the keys to our DNA so we can start remembering. And that's what they're doing. From the age of 7 through the age of 18, I was caught between a battle of the outer manifestations of dark and light. And of course, must be a reflection of my own karmic heritage, because as within, so without, as they say. Above and so below. We're dealing with race karma here. A repeating of our race karmic heritage, of the battle of dark and light within ourselves as creator gods. It's a huge interdimensional spectrum. To bring it down to earth enough to understand how to manipulate in it while we're down here. We need to understand that there are two sides, and the healing of that is bringing them back into one wholeness. First, you need to learn to hold your own self so the other side doesn't suck you in. Then you have to learn to gently ease the other side back over into healing. First, let's worry about ourselves. Get ourselves all right, aligned, get our fields protected, then we're okay. When I encountered the Guardian Alliance, they also took me the abductions, but I don't really call them abductions because I agreed after they had introduced themselves to me. And both of my first encounters with each group took place in daylight. When I was 4 and playing in the driveway next to my aunt's trailer, and a being came up behind me that I thought was a child at first, and I turned around and looked, and that was no child. It was the size of a child, it was a little gray. And I wanted to run and scream, but I couldn't move because it did one of those little, they have a little silver rod that does a bioneurological block where you lose the motor skills. So that was my first, and then I was lifted up into a craft. When I was 7, I was approached in these lilac bushes that I used to play in at my grandmother's house. Broad daylight again, and I was approached by one, again it was a gray, but it was a blue-eyed gray, which I'd never seen before, with the negative sign. And it froze framed me, maybe so I couldn't move. But it said to me, it didn't use a silver rod either. This one was able to do it just with projection, which was a little difference there. Shows you that, they're more advanced if they don't need the outside technology. It said to me, you don't have to be frightened anymore. We're aware and we're going to help you. So it was kind of interesting from a child's perspective, seeing the same type of being, one being your terror and the other being your savior. It was kind of strange. the little gray that I had met with the blue eyes, I call them blue eyes for short, took me to meet the rest of the guardian lines. They would pick me up in the evenings in ships. They have craft, but what they are plasma craft. They're actually interdimensional light vehicles that become solid when they come down here, but then they transmute through the levels of matter density and then pop up someplace else and get solid again. So they can take you on these. These ships actually work as buffers for people whose gene codes can't tolerate full portal transmutation yet. To go through a portal, you have to be able to do something called enter Merkaba. It's a state of building a light body around you. It's releasing the phase lock on the cellular code that allows the energy fields to spin in a certain way, that allows the body form to turn into light or antimatter, and then back manifesting in someplace else. So during my experience in childhood with these different groups, the one group, the guardians, were teaching me about the mechanics of how to do these things. They were using Merkaba mechanics to take things places, and others. The others were using mechanical technologies to get similar results. I was taken to underground military bases. I was subjected to very strange-looking apparatus that I learned later were perversions of kinetic science technology, which use certain light symbol codes as waveguides to directly block and alter the morphogenetic field so you can get control, literally bioneurological mind control over people by manipulating their DNA. I was subjected to those things. I was used for readers. They tell me I have 3 male children of what's called the Borenthian race, which is a kind of hybrid specialization one. It was created on the intruder side. I've never met those beings. I also have one child named Charlemagne that was created by the guardian side. And she is part of the Zephalian, which is the highest castes of the Zetas, combined with the human imprint and some other higher ones. It's a very personal journey that I have been on. I was part of a project called Project 014. It was one of the forerunners to the Montauk Project in '83. In Project 014, they would trace certain gene lines and family lines, and they would abduct. They would have the Zetas abduct. The government would have the Zetas abduct people with certain gene lines, children. They would take them in and get them under mind control. Then they would use their DNA, and they would make clones. This is the part of the Montauk thing that I don't think anybody's talked about yet. This part's going to get me in trouble once it gets out that I'm talking about this. But what the heck, you heard it here first. If I disappear, know you heard it here. You know? And remember this. Tape it and let other people know. They would do cloning. They would clone the ones that had the ability to go through the time portals. And that's when, in the beginning days, when they were just beginning to learn how to do the Montauk stuff. Montauk are time portals that are literally forced open within the interdimensional grids. It's a technology that can actually end up blowing up a planet. It's not meant to be done. It's something that the Zetas actually did that to their home planet. They forced a dimensional blend. And it created a black hole that basically destroyed both the planet and its parallel, double. This is what Montauk's going to go into if they keep playing with it the way they're going to. But they're planning to use it for some major other things, you know, that we have to worry about more. But I was part of the forwarding projects to Montauk, where they made clones of this body, and they sent them back in time. They tell me I have one in about 1922. I have one in 1945, one in 1955. There's around 12 from what I hear. Even the Guardians don't know exactly how many. I'm not the only one that's part of this project. I was just one of the sheep that they used for this experiment. What they do with the clone bodies is they take over, they allow the avatar matrices that are 10-dimensional consciousness without body forms of their own. They allow them to embody within the higher coded bodies. They create little armies and little operatives here. And usually, once the cloning experiments are done, they destroy the original. Do you know why? Clones don't have a connection to the soul matrix, which is the 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensional level of identity. The original does. The connection between the clone and the soul matrix is the original. If you want to have a body pattern, take it over and have it not have a higher identity, you clone one with a high coding, kill the original, and then you have a being that has no soul connection, or any possibility to try to make a soul connection. This is what they're trying to do to this whole race. If they were the ones to get control, which they're not going to be, our whole race would be mutated into a form of being that had what's called the silver cord, which is a frequency of energy that runs between the lower dimensional parts and the higher dimensional parts. That silver cord would be severed permanently, and it would be there would be a genetic mutation that would make it so that silver cord could never be reattached. That's what they want to do to us. We're not going to let it happen. So when I talk to you about this, I've lived through the pain of this nonsense. I didn't have a childhood or even an adolescence. Actually, my adolescence was kind of funny. Missing persons quite often. I took the rap for being a runaway quite often because it was much easier than explaining, well, sorry, I had an appointment on a spaceship. If when I was, 12, 14, 16, try to explain why I missed a week of school and sorry, Dad, I didn't come home. If I tried to explain that I had been taken on spaceships, they would have had me locked up someplace. And I was trained by the guardians to never, ever tell. Not till I was older, not till it was time. So my freedom wouldn't be taken from me. My freedom of speech and my freedom of thought. Because you know what happens, even today? If you have, say, a teenager that's having encounters, and having missing time or being taken places and knowing it, if they go in to talk to anybody, they rush them off to a shrink and they put them on drugs. That's scary. They take away their mental freedom chemically for even talking about these things. So I was advised all along to not talk about it. So I took the rap. Okay, I don't know. New York somewhere. It had to be like cover stories, conscious cover stories. Because if I told them that I was on spaceships being trained in interdimensional physics and things like that, they would have had a real problem with it. And I would have lost my freedom. It was also a torturous time because the intruders were trying to kill the body. Once they realized, once I hit age 16, I started getting the training in what intruder agendas were. And the guardians started to explain to me the drama that was taking place down here. That's when I became a real danger, because the intruders knew that once I hit adulthood and the guardians gave me the okay to talk, boy was I going to talk. And I was going to expose as far and wide as I could the plants that were taking place there. So they tried to kill me numerous times. They tried to use the impulse technologies on me. Got to the point where when I was 18 years old, I tried to kill this body to get out of it because they had me so trapped in it. It was terrifying. Fortunately, I guess, the guardians intervened. They allowed a near-death experience to happen. That is a profound experience, and I can explain to you what it is. I like how science tries to rationalize it as just a fleeting thing that happens as brain chemistry fires. Sorry, consciousness came before brains. They haven't figured this out yet. When you go into a near-death experience, the consciousness is raising in vibration. It's dislodging itself from its immersion within the gene pattern, and it's going into fourth dimensional frequency first. That will be perceived. There's a repulsion zone, magnetic repulsion zone, which is where particles spin against each other and they create like a magnetism between the third and fourth dimension. When you move through that dark tunnel, you're going through the magnetic repulsion zone. Your consciousness is moving through that frequency. And then when you go into the light at the end of the tunnel, you're hitting fourth and fifth dimensional frequencies. That's what it will translate to you because it vibrates higher than your consciousness. What is higher than your consciousness in vibrational oscillation rate will appear as light. This is what the process of a near-death experience is. At some point, if I ever have time, when I don't have to talk about ETs, just to let people know what's going on so they start to really pay attention, I would love to teach people about near-death experience, about what to expect and why you don't even have to be dead to have one.
Yes. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
And in fact,
I'm glad you said that.
if you want to be prepared, I mean, we have two ways of getting out of here. We're either going to do it the traditional way, which is drop the body and die, or we're going to transmute the cellular code, which takes a little longer, and not all of us have enough time to get it done within the time frame that's available. So a lot of people are going to choose to leave the usual way. In facing death, so many people are terrified of this. We're not taught how to die. We're not taught how to live. We're not taught how to die either. Dying is easy. There's a way of disengaging your consciousness from your chakra systems. When you get into situations where they're prolonging life by medicating you to death, where you can't even keep a thought in your head, they're blocking the natural process half the time. Or when you cross over, if you do manage to drag yourself out of that gene code, you're going to be so disoriented, you're not going to know which end is up. You're just going to flip through a bunch of errant thought patterns that you had that you never assimilated before. There are ways of knowing your bioenergetic system, that whether you're going to live or die, whichever you choose, you'll do it much better. You'll do it with awareness and consciousness. You will not have to use medicines to keep you alive. You'll be able to say, well, I guess the body's like, kind of worn out now. Maybe it's time for a new reality space. You won't have to commit suicide. That's the chicken way. Only the ones that don't know how to do it, like I didn't when I was 18, try to kill it. If you want to leave, you do soul integration. And you become your soul identity by integrating the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional aspects of your being. From that level, you have the right to make a decision whether you're going to stay or whether you're going to leave. And you also have the mechanics, where you simply say, okay, if I choose to go, I will just arrange for either something to happen to the body, accidents, there are no such thing as accidents, actually, or you will simply lie it down and leave. Yogi masters know how to do this. So this is stuff that's been here, little pieces all along. So what I'm talking about, it's high science. It's high truth. I hope that, I don't know how long I've been going here, and I could probably go forever, so just kind of go, we're getting close to time.
Close, but this.
I'll leave a little bit of time for questions, but I think I'd like to get a drink of water before I do that. I just want to wrap up, I think, with what I was talking about we need to be aware of the personal stuff as far as the DNA, so we can make our transitions into these spaces, into these energy frequencies, happen a lot more smoothly. We don't have to be scared, and we can overcome this ET problem. They explain something to me one way. There's a lot of people, especially the New Age movement, that like to totally deny the existence of intruder ETs. Oh, there's good ones, but there's no nasty ones. Love, light, and cluelessness, I like to call it. There is also love, light, and awareness.
Yes.
And that is what we teach. And boy, I've made a lot of enemies in the New Age circuit. And that's just too bad. I'm telling you both sides. We're in a polarity universe here, and the answer is unity consciousness and Christ consciousness. But you're not going to get that if you pretend the other side of the polarity doesn't exist. It's just like saying, well, I don't like gravity, so I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. It's going to affect you anyway. Now, if you know how to mess with your DNA and activate it to certain levels, you can transcend the effects of gravity. Yes, you can. You're not going to learn to transcend it if you ignore it. You're not going to make it go away by pretending it away, by pretending it doesn't exist. You need to learn the mechanics to transcend certain conditions that are affecting people on a mass level. This is what a lot of the New Age stuff doesn't teach you. It teaches you some real good stuff. Thoughts are things. These kind of things, yes, they are. But we are dealing with a mass thought field here, a multidimensional mass thought field. We're dealing with race karma, not just personal karma. We're all connected to this or we wouldn't be here right now. We need to acknowledge both sides and acknowledge the solution as bringing the two sides together. And it first has to happen in ourselves. That's where the personal work with the New Age stuff comes in, where you work with all sorts of different things to release block things here and there and everywhere else. There's lots of good things you can do. You can do toning, you can go to shaman school, you can do all sorts of things. The easiest way is to learn Humantic morphogenetic science. That goes beyond the chakra system into the core of the blueprint. That's where things can be shifted from and changed from. That's why I'm setting up the Institute for Humantic Science. It can be applied to healing. It can be applied to manifestation abilities. Yes, when you get good at this, you can learn to make things happen. There's certain codes on that, though. You have to have. Look, you only get to have certain knowledge once you've demonstrated that you will use it fairly and not use it to harm other beings or things. There's a lot of leeway. Look at Rosetta. They get to play with a lot of technologies, and they're doing a lot of harm with it. But I would hope that you would be interested in some of the programs we have to offer. Okay, I'm just getting going with these, and I've been under a lot of attack. More and more. Each workshop I give, because each workshop I give gives the next level of data. There have been attempts, just stupid little things, arranged to make sure I didn't have stuff done on time or get there on time. But I still managed to get there. Yeah. This time, what was interesting, we have something coming up. It's a trip to Egypt. We've been asked to go to Egypt because we've been given the codes on the Hall of Records There are 3 electromagnetic frequency seals on the Hall of Records. The Hall of Records, I love this. There's like a lot of the Egyptian government people, we know there's no Hall of Records in there. You know, we've used ultrasound, we've used all sorts of things. There's some chambers, but there's no Hall of Records. People are expecting this big library or something, like you're going to find this hidden room in the Sphinx, open it up, there's going to be bookshelves, you know, with these ancient texts to tell you the secrets of the universe. I hate to disappoint everybody. It's not a physical room with books in it. There is a physical space in the Sphinx that was used specifically for merging 3 beings' consciousness together that would blow open a frequency seal, that would open the ley lines on the planetary grid to allow the universal memory banks to download. That's why it's the Hall of Records, because it has all the information that's recorded in not only what they call the Akashic record, which is kind of like the local universe level, it has everything that's in the Dora record, which is the 15-dimensional matrix plus 3 levels beyond that aren't dimensionalized. The Hall of Records modulates how much of that information can digitally download into the planetary grids. When it's in the planetary grids, it will affect your bioenergetic system and go into your DNA. And if you have the DNA that corresponds to those frequencies, it will translate through into awareness. This is what opening the Hall of Records is about. We're also, which is connected to this, is releasing the first seals on the halls of Amenhotep. They are the stargates that lead between Earth and the planetary core of Tara in Harmonic Universe 2, which is Earth's future self. They're opening. We were entrusted with the coding to do this. And it won't be given to us till we get there. We have some of it. There's certain tonings that have to be done, certain energy dynamics, galactic science, that is best. So we're doing this trip. Just so happens, we had the ads going out in the UK. They're going out in like Nexus magazine in the United Kingdom. Deadlines, I mean, we're crunched to the deadlines. Just so happens, my husband ends up in the hospital right before them. He's in the hospital because he's been being messed with big time. He's in a recovery unit because they started to mess with his head. I love this person very much. I'm living the nightmare of the reality of ET manipulation. I have seen it affect my family. So if anybody doesn't think, and I'm speaking from the heart, I have seen things that would scare most people very much. There's a person I care about right now struggling to regain his balance because something other than himself is trying to use his consciousness. I have seen this with other people that wasn't so close to me before. So I'm noticing, I'm just kind of taking a mental note. The closer I get to revealing the bigger and bigger and higher level truths, the truths that will set you free, that will give you the information you need to make a stand here. Because you're not going to make a stand and go down the White House and throw a fit. I mean, this is going to get nowhere. You know what I mean? And the people that are trying to get involved with the lawsuits, release these records, who cares anymore? We have 10 to 12 years to get our act together. It doesn't matter who hit what when. Just acknowledge it was done, and it's time to learn what we need to do. So there's a lot of stuff you can cut out of your way of wasting time, you know, that a lot of the people in the UFO movement and the New Age movement are trying to do. A lot of it's a waste of time. You can jump right up to what's happening now. The more you will try to find your higher levels of awareness, the more you will find your forces within yourself trying to pull you away from it. You'll find the inner skeptic. You'll find the dweller at the threshold saying, I can't actually believe this is true. What can I do? You know better than that. You have to retain that focus. Wait a minute. Am I going to choose to be a multidimensional being? Or am I going to settle for being a three-dimensional animal? Did God create me as an animal? Or did he create me as a divine being in his own image? Even the books tell us that. And the image wasn't a male gender figure with long flowing white beards. It was in the image of spirit, of pure consciousness. We were all created in the image of God. We are all pieces of the consciousness of God. It's about time we remember. So that's what my programs are about. I'm trying to think of one last thing to say, but I think questions will probably be the best thing.
Why don't you take your water break?
Good idea.
Rest of them in the
They're calling themselves ascended masters. Some of them are, most of them aren't. Just because somebody got to D4, that means you died. I mean, excuse me, you didn't ascend exactly, you died, you know. When you die, your consciousness goes over to D4. You could technically say I ascended from D3, But that is not what's really meant by the concept of ascended mastery. Each one of us, eternally, has a level of ascended mastery right now. Remember, time is simultaneous. That level of you exists in the frequencies of the 8th Huva body. The way to get that into your body here, so you know yourself as that, is to progressively integrate the Huva bodies that are between. Your lighting, your scalar grids. So that's the process, and that's what part of what we teach.
So from the ascended master's perception, under the law of one, then all activities are parts of ourselves.
Oh yeah. As you, it's funny, as you progress through Huva body integration and you move from being in gross matter density to semi-etheric density and then up to etheric density, you get less and less outside of you as you contain more and more within you. And eventually you get to the state where it was all within you anyway, and you know yourself in the state of Godhood. And that's when you start to really get the cognitions, and they're neat when they start to flicker through you here, where you look around you and realize it's all not real. You realize that right now in this moment, you are an infinite consciousness stationed all over the place. That we are the same being with everything else in the universe out there. We are each little faces of the consciousness of God. And once we put down our little costumes, we are the Gestalt identity called God. So we're all part of it. The law of one is understanding that. And as you progress with integration, you get to that. And it starts to get fun. Because I know when I'm looking at you or any other audience, some of them hate me. They really want to argue with me. It's like, I'm arguing with myself. Yes, you represent a part of my miasmic pattern. We are symbol people to each other. And down deep inside, we are all the essence of Source, even the bad guys. It's just they know that less than we do. That's why it's our job. When we get integrated, we're going to have to teach them. Because for everything to be healed, it's kind of like modern surgery. It doesn't work, cut it off. It doesn't exactly work that way because it'll mess up the whole system if you cut things out. If you can heal something and get its energy working the right way so it's in harmony with the rest of the system, that's how true wholeness and healing occur, in the body or in the consciousness of the mind of God. So when we have our dark versus light dramas taking place in these lower dimensional fields, it's a process of the God mind trying to harmonize itself. And nothing takes place outside of the God mind. So the good guys and the bad guys exist within the God mind. And we're just it's kind of like maybe God trying to balance his mental chemistry. And I'm not denouncing the true magnificence of the God energy, because that's a very small analogy for a very big concept that is called God. But the oneness is there, and we will evolve to understand this. And part of that evolution can be made very simple, by simply using the roadmap. I mean, you can take any path you want, but there's short ways and there's long ways. We've got kind of one of the shorter ways to do it. There's still work involved. There's still learning to change your perspectives. Like, wait a minute, when it comes to home, that means like when I make decisions about business, I'm not just thinking, I can scam that guy and I'll make a few extra bucks here and that kind of stuff. Some of us are so ingrained in these patterns because we've been taught this, that this is survival here. When you begin to try to integrate higher identity, you need to find a place of integrity within your being where that comes first. But then you will find the universe responds and sends you more of the same. You'll get what you put out. So there's a lot to it, but it's not that hard. Is that, you asked a question and I can go forever. So is that, okay. Yes.
Next year, when the inner seven planets align on May 5th, what's the ramifications of that that's going to take place then?
Well, the alignments of the planets is actually kind of a visual manifestation of greater things that are taking place within the time cycles. That is the official opening of the fourth vortex at Giza. That's if you compare it to the heart chakra of the planet, that's when the fourth vortex is opening. It begins with what's called the Day of Transcendence on 1/1/2000, and then it progresses. There's a vibration that's going to be running through the grid. And then on 5/5, when those alignments take place, the energy fields generated by those alignments will affect the energy fields of the Earth, and it will create the release of the seal, the fourth vortex seal. And that's when we start to go into time shift. That's when things start to get weird.
So it's vibrational more than physical.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's vibrational.
Yeah, you may have some problem with the tides,
Yeah.
from what I've
Mostly
heard.
it's
There may be
vibrational.
some strange movements with the tides with that
It'll
alignment.
be locked and loaded then when that, you want to be locked and loaded when it comes.
Yeah, we haven't even dealt with that too much because there's so many other problematic issues that have had to come first. Like the trip we're doing to Giza is to release the seals on Hall of Records and Halls of Mente, but it's also to counteract what they're doing on 1/1/2000. They're having a big celebration over there
Yes,
at the pyramid. Now, the Great Pyramid was built to protect the Halls of Mente and the Hall of Records. They're energy phenomena, areas in the Earth grid that were important, so that's why those monuments are put there. Certain forces have been motivated to create certain activities there that will throw certain things out of balance. There's a connection in the ley lines of the grid, and this is going to be interesting, between Montauk in New York, between that circle they just discovered in Miami, between something that's a quarter-mile off the coast of Siesta Key, where I just was instructed to move down because there's energy work that needs to be done. There's a connection between those points to Giza, and there is a plan to do some things that will make the energy grid balances very precarious if they're carried out, which could lead to tectonic cracking when the vortice is open. So we're being sent in to do mechanical kinetic work on the grids. And this is, I'm going to get into some of this in the New York lecture. This is some of the newer stuff that they're saying, like, they won't tell me until it's time to tell me, because then I'm in danger if I know it beforehand. You know? So there's connections happening with more important things than just the stellar alignments. We have alignments taking place in the grids and on the planet that are aggressively being pursued as we speak. Yes.
What we call or talk about the universal consciousness, will this get a step higher after 5/5? In other words, will there be a little bit more of a wake up?
Oh, there's going to be a great wake-up call. The big one is going to be in 2012, when we all hit fifth strand activation temporarily, whether we're ready or not. What's going to happen as the vortice is open, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th, our DNA is going to trigger. And however much of your DNA you have straightened out enough to sequence properly, you're going to bring more and more and more higher level awareness in. Things are just going to dawn on you. Direct cognition. Things will just come. You will get more of your incarnational memory to start to remember who you were as a soul being before you came into a body. So yes, that consciousness is going to be coming into the planet, into the people's DNA, and it's going to progressively raise the frequency of the bodies and the consciousness and the planet itself.
I was just, the Mayan calendar, they're always saying that everything ends with 2012. I mean, they sort of like knew all this.
December
Yeah, they're the timekeepers.
Right.
The Mayans were very interesting. They had a little interesting habit. The reason they were timekeepers, they did something with their morphogenetic codes, where when they would cross over in death, they would immediately reincarnate. So you had generation after generation actually the same beings. They didn't wait like 400 or 500 years between their spaces. They continually flipped over and carried the coding, so they would have the full alignment of time, which meant they could take a time vector and run it forward or backward, or sideways or any other way, and get a read on what was out in those areas of time. So they have a specialty that in that particular genetic code, they geared it toward being able to read time vector matrices. So they did know. They were the timekeepers. And that's why they knew, because they did it genetically.
Were you talking about the wingmakers?
I heard of the wingmakers. Somebody has sent me some things on them. I haven't had time to go into that yet, to even research them. And I asked my guys, and I said, you want a transmission link? I said, wait a minute, I have like 4 to take down so far, and if you knew what my schedule was like, I have to take things like that and put them in a pile and say, okay, if I ever have free time, I will get information on that. Okay? If it's directly important, the program I'm teaching, to what the Guardian Alliance is trying to get into people's awareness, they will give me information on it as part of their program. If not, I can ask them just about anything, and they will give me a rundown on it. And they would do that on that too. They said, oh, you'll enjoy this, you know these guys. And that's all they told me, was the ones involved with the, yeah, with the wingmakers. What is it? Engineer. I get a feeling on that. It's not my guys. They're not ones that I directly deal with, but it's like a family of consciousness that has its own thing going. And I know that if I look into it, it'll be another book, and I don't have time for that one right now, because that would be just, it would be not something that's essential for me to know, for me to teach in my program. The people that are doing Wingmakers will bring out what needs to be done on that project. So it's not something I have a lot of data on. But I could get it, but somebody else will do that one, you know?
What's the connection between the Presidio and Montauk?
Between what?
The Presidio and Frisco?
I'm not, nobody said anything
Well,
about that.
supposedly it's set up very similar to Montauk was there.
Okay, I know there's 4 others like Montauk on the planet. They haven't told me the location of them, that may be one of them. What they're telling me about Montauk right now is not so much locations of all the underground bases and all the other things. They're telling me what they're going to do with it in relation to the series of portals that link between the United States and a couple other countries and into Giza and into the main primary portal things. Because I'm on a team called the Portal Protection Team, and that's where my information is geared. There's a lot of people who have more information on things like the maps of the underground bases and as far as locations of different things. There are people that have expertise in that. That's not my expertise. So, you know, I probably can't answer that any more than what I just did.
You seem confident that the Zetas and the Dracons aren't going to succeed. How do you know this? I mean, you're expounding the thing like we're going to make it through this, and we're going to be exposed to these. But all these frequencies with HARP and the pulse that you're talking about, how are you sure that they're not going to put a block to this?
I'm modeling a posture that is essential that we take. Our thoughts are things we create with our thoughts. If you want to accomplish something, whether it's a little thing or a big thing, you simply don't allow yourself any other option. Because if you do, you'll find a way to make the other part come true. I have found to be an effective person in little things in life. If something needs to be done, I'm just not going to say, but what if? I don't allow myself. I could go on forever terrorizing myself, looking at the odds of this succeeding with the odds that are stacked against us. And I could spend my time lowering my thought patterns and the vibration of my thoughts, which lowers my body and keeps my DNA suppressed, into worrying about, oh my God, how are we going to get through this? If you notice with any thought, listen just for a minute, if you notice with any thought or any word, they each have a vibration to them. Some thoughts vibrate higher, some vibrate lower. In the choices you make, in the words you use outside and to yourself, you are creating energy vibration patterns. If you fill your mind with ideas of fear, what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't work out good? What if it's scary? What if it's bad? You're creating lower vibrating thought patterns. Our success here depends on raising frequency, making our bodies, our minds, and our planet vibrate higher. If I were to go out there and say to people, look how bad it is, this is really scary, you know, the odds that we're going to survive this, not very good. You know, if I went out with that attitude, first of all, nobody would want to listen to it. If it's that bad, why bother knowing? If we can't fix it, don't bother telling me. Let me enjoy my ignorance of bliss, thank you. You know, if the Guardians didn't know, we stood a fighting chance here to really wake up and turn this potential negative into a great positive. They wouldn't be making the effort to give this information. If it was hopeless here or didn't look good, they wouldn't bother. They'd just let us go until it blew up in our faces.
Why do the Guardians let them go this far?
It's not their job to protect us from our own choices.
Free will. All right.
They'll intervene when they can, but just like you can't keep your child locked in the closet from now until eternity to keep it safe, you have to let it go out. And if it makes mistakes and falls on its face, you feel bad and you want to help and you do help when you can. But you have to allow the children to develop independence and the ability to make choices that are effective. And that's why they allowed us to let it come this far.
Let me say a question.
In your book, you say that the pyramid is the trademark of the Anunnaki.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit, and how does that relate to the Cydonia region on Mars?
Okay, well, that was once an off-planet base when there were certain wars taking place here, and I believe it was the second seeding. which we're part of the third seeding of the race here. We were wiped out twice by the higher ones fighting over whether we were going to evolve or not. The pyramids were part of Anunnaki culture. That was part of the Syrian strains. The Syrian consciousness is very mathematically and geometrically oriented. Some groups of consciousness and their body forms that they make are more geared toward intuitive associative processes, where they have more fluid, like the Arcturian consciousness is much more fluid. It has its mathematical translation, but it's not into solid forms and objects. It's a different type of process. With the Anunnaki and the Syrian strains, and the Anunnaki come out of something called the Anahazi, okay? They were the original light-bearing, founding Syrian race that the Syrian races came out of. The Anunnaki got mixed up with the Draconian matrix and lost part of their higher dimensional coding and became mutated genetically. But they still carry a lot of the attributes that were part of the Anahazi matrix. And the Anahazi were very much aware of the geometrical relationships within the morphogenetic field of things. Pyramids are created, and there's different forms that are created for different reasons. Pyramids are able to take, they work as scalar grids, as three-dimensional scalar grids. They will take energy and frequency coming in and bend it in certain ways that allows amplification of certain patterns to occur. That's why you can like mummify things by sticking them in pyramid shapes and that kind of thing. So the Anunnaki used them as kind of like power generators within their cultural structures. So when they came to other planets, they would build them also there to use them for the same purposes. There were ways to key in the pyramids in Giza, for instance, into the old Atlantean crystal generators, the smaller ones that were still left and they're still here. There are ways to focus those energies and bring them in, and you could literally create things like laser energy, things that could direct the levitation of rocks, for instance. Like, that's how the pyramids were created. They weren't hauled up there, like they said. When they were repaired, they were the last time. But before that, they were created through these focus of energy. So the pyramids were a technology, just like we have technologies in, we have like little cameras in boxes and things. Well, they have big technologies and big pyramids that they use as interdimensional teleport stations and all sorts of things. I'm going to say a little bit more on the Anunnaki. The ones that built the pyramid for the Anunnaki of the Syrian Council, they were the Anunnaki that decided to honor their highest evolution and stick with the Anahazi of the Syrian Council. They were the good guys. All right. The ones that weren't the good guys were the Anunnaki Rebellion, which were the ones that sided with the Draconians and fought with the Syrian Council over whether this race was going to be allowed to evolve, and other races too. So the pyramids here were built by good guys, primarily. There's a couple that were put in there that weren't even from the Anunnaki. They were actually from other groups like the Kurandara. But basically, most of the primary ones that we've identified are under the Anunnaki influence. Is that the good Anunnaki influence? Does that round up the question for you?
Thank you.
Okay.
There are two kind of specific Montauk-related questions. One, is something being planned for August of 2003? And secondly, are they trying to plan for potential time jumping of the entire planet, perhaps to move it out of the way of these positive incoming rays?
Hey, that's what we're doing. It's called the Grid Zone Project. That's what the book gets into. Have you read the book at all?
Part, but I'm wondering if the Montauk is working specifically against that.
Yeah, it's attempting to work against that. Montauk, from what I get, I'm just getting the rundown on Montauk because I was not allowed to have a lot of it because it wasn't time to talk about it. And see, when they put it through a person, they give you information, it becomes available to anything that can read the matrix down here. So there's certain information they only give me when it's happening. When it's time now, it's time to know. With Montauk, there's a huge connection to something called parallel Earth. Here we go to sliders, as far as a point of reference. Star Trek, now we have sliders. It's not a joke. Parallel Earth has fallen under the control of the Draco set of resistance. In a stellar activation cycle, the time vectors of Earth and parallel Earth progressively blend and become one. By 2012, they will be the same time vector. We will merge with our doubles. Montauk wants to make sure that happens because Montauk is being controlled by the overlords of the Draconian matrix, which are of the Black Sun genetic subspan matrices. What the Guardian races are trying to do, and what my work specifically is about, and the groups that we're forming, is to create a time vector severance between Earth and its parallel, plug in this time vector into another parallel that sidesteps that one, so that doesn't manifest here. Because if something isn't done, it's going to manifest here. And then we're going to be in trouble. Then it's going to be that what if. So we're here to make sure the what if doesn't happen. And we're doing heavy duty time vector realignment mechanics. That's why we're going to Egypt first, then we're going to Peru. And we're going to a couple other places that are key places between the harmonics of this planet and Tara and harmonic 2. So we're doing grid mechanics. Montauk is totally tied up in it. And they're trying to use it to make sure that we don't get out of this time vector. They're trying to make sure that the Bridge Zone project doesn't work. They're trying to make sure we stay under the control. So that's where Montauk fits in. There's a lot more detail to it that will be revealed as I go along, they told me. So.
I'm going to throw out two names, 2 words for you, just let you go with it.
Okay.
You decide how long you want to go. It's getting late, so it's up to you.
Yeah, I'm getting tired.
Yeah, but I'm going to throw out the Essenes and Melchizedek.
Okay. Well, Melchizedek, I am one. Okay. I'll deal with that second.
Whichever way you want to do it.
Now, the Essenes and Melchizedek actually go together because the Essenes were one of the many race strings, actually, that carried the full diamond sun code matrix, which is the full silicate matrix potential in their DNA. And they could activate that for ascension. They kept the codes alive on the planet in the race morphogenetic field. And they were traced way back through, they went back through Hebrew, through Egyptian, all the way back through the early root races. There were certain families that were the keepers of the codes. They would always carry, they were the blue flame Melchizedek families. And the Essenes were one manifestation of the blue flame Melchizedek families. So were certain ones within the Egyptian Pharaonic lines. So were certain ones within ancient Atlantean cultures, and even before that. So the Essenes and Melchizedeks fit together. I'm real affectionate toward both of those names because the last time I was here in incarnation, I was an Essene, and my name was Miriam, and I was the half-sister of Joshua 12, and he was a wonderful older brother to have, and he taught me many wonderful things. And we were Essenes, and we practiced the Essene. You know, it's funny, some of the Essene laws that's come down, if they only knew what went on in those temples, they would be really amazed. Because we were very aware of genetics, all right? We didn't need the term DNA to understand what happened when you combine certain morphogenetic fields with other morphogenetic fields. There were seedings done purposely to create family lines that would extend outward in time, and those family lines are still alive today. Some of us here may be a part of them. So there was a lot of neat things that went down in the Essenes that never got reported. But basically they dealt with protecting the knowledge of ascension and protecting the codes of ascension, which are the silicate matrix codes. And I'm considered, what I'm known by the Guardian Alliance is, my name is Onea Kananda Melchizedek. And that's because I always was, since the first time I entered incarnation into any of the systems down here. I was part of the Blue Flame Souls group, and I still am, once you already kind of always are. So there's a lot. I did a whole workshop on explaining Melchizedek and what that name really means. There's a lot of Melchizedeks popping up these days. Melchizedek priesthoods. I mean, the Mormons actually have their higher priesthoods, the Melchizedek priesthood. And most of them are very, very patriarchal. Well, excuse me, I've been trained by the Melchizedek cloister. That's my family. That's the governing body on the cosmic level of all the little priesthoods that come down out of it. It's a family of consciousness. And in the cloister, which encompasses the rest of the other family lines, it is not patriarchal. The teachings of ascension are not patriarchal. That's a twist that they put on from the higher universes. It was meant to be equals. It was meant to be egalitarian. And it's about time the feminine voices started standing up and say, excuse me, we don't buy this stuff anymore. You know who gave us the male God concept as a physical being outside of ourselves? It was part Anunnaki, part Nephilim. All those who wanted us to think God was outside of ourselves, not inside of ourselves. So when we get into Melchizedek, we get into the very core or what's been happening here, not many other levels with our size. That's as far as I'm going to go with Melchizedek here. I could go for days on that
No,
one.
you did fine, thank you. You want to take one or two more? Or?
All right, two more.
Or John, go ahead, John.
I just, what thoughts come to mind when you think of things like Ark of the Covenant, and are they energy sources, or are there more than one? Or
Did you read the book yet?
no, I haven't, but I can tell you now that I will. I haven't.
It's described in there what it is exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
I haven't been exposed, but you've
Yeah.
created it.
It's a
You've
time portal
generated
passage. They think it's a box. That was the diversion.
About some of the ways you asked the question yet.
Okay. We'll forget two. I'll take two more. There's two
Okay,
people here.
thank you.
Okay.
I was just a little surprised when you said that the avatars would have more because I thought they were such high consciousness that they wouldn't move.
That's what a lot of people assume. They think that as soon as you get out of here, you become a perfect being that has no imbalances. Now, if we understood a little more about the physics of dimensionalization, it would make sense why we can have, even at very high levels, things that are showing polarity. It's polarity that creates the conflict and the imbalance. Polarity in a dimensionalized system, the very structure of dimensionalization depends on the separation between electrical and magnetic. That's what creates dimensionalization. So you will have, to some degree, polarization all the way down the dimensional scale. Now, as you work your way back up it, the avatar level is the last level, because that gets 12 dimensions of polarity. Once you fulfill that 12th level and pass from liquid light back into antimatter, that is where the harmonization takes place. That's called the Rishi level of identity in personal terms. It's once you hit harmonic 5 that you don't have imbalances to that degree anymore. And when you go beyond that to the levels of ascended mastery, you don't have that either. And there are ascended mastery consciousness levels that look down and they know they have their families that are totally out of balance. They also know for the whole game within the God mind to take place, it requires both sides, or you won't have manifestation. So it's it is all perfectly in divine order. It just can get really uncomfortable down here sometimes. You know?
Okay, I think there was one more. Anyone wanted to?
Could you say something about the time-space illusion?
Time-space illusion? You mean the hologram?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of those questions that could take 6 years to answer.
Well, you don't have to answer.
She
that,
might
sorry.
have pretty much kind of covered a lot.
Well, what would you like me to say on it? Give me a little specific and I can do it quick.
Well, there's a conflict in my mind. People talk about karma, and then other people talk about the simultaneity of time. The two don't mix. I mean, how do you resolve?
Actually, they do.
They do.
They do mix, yes. All right, time is simultaneous. So you have various aspects of the self broken down into different space-time locations, okay? They are linked through the soul matrix, which is the center point of consciousness that they come out of when they fragment down into the lower harmonic
That's a higher
universe.
being, would you say?
Well, your soul matrix is your next higher level of identity. And the soul matrix actually creates 12 pieces of itself to go into the lower harmonic, which creates cycles of 12 incarnations. All right? So your consciousness is connected to the consciousness of other beings. Now, it comes down to something called a miasm. A miasm is a blockage within the morphogenetic body. If we go back to the morphogenetic field being a crystal body that's made like a quartz crystal cluster, to use an example, it would be like in a clear white quartz crystal cluster, black crystals thrown in that are different shaped, that don't allow the energy to move the right way. We collect these depending on the thoughts we think, depending on what we do with our energy when we're here. When you have karma, you're taking the miasms you built up, the misalignments in the energy field that's in this life, A over here, they bleed through into B over here and into C over there, and they begin to amplify each other. Now, we have a whole program that got into something called the Palladian seal that was placed in the gene code that made us into walking miasmic messes. Karma was not supposed to be the way we evolved. We were not supposed to die, we were supposed to transmute. And there's been things done to us that have made karma something it was never intended to be. But there isn't really intrinsically a conflict between those things. It just would take probably a full day workshop to get you to the point where you say, oh, I get that. You know what I mean? I think that's the best I can do with that one this time frame.
I think he's begging for
Just
one
a
little
little-
one. Begging for one little one.
Is there a connection, or, if there is, between all this, you know, you're talking about the patriarchal, you know, the Anthony and the Knights Templar, are they like in this mix anyway?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do it. That's good. Did
I
she
think I'll
answer
just
it?
leave it at,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Okay.
think she answered it.
Because I'm not gonna get into them and the Masons and a whole bunch of other guys that are really trying to get me right now because I'm
But they're
talking
all-
about their doctrines.
But they're all connected, I mean, they're all part of it.
Yeah, they were part of, actually, they came out of the families of the Essenes that were called the Jeshua Nines. See, when Jeshua 12 was sent in, there was a diversion sent in by the Middle Council Elohim that was a 9th level avatar rather than 12. It was meant to take some of the teachings on a little bit different journey that would lead to not quite as much freedom for humans. And they weren't necessarily bad. They were kind of like, well, there's many shades of gray between the dark and the light. They were part of the Elohim that wanted to suppress us here to make sure only certain strains of us evolved the right way. Jeshua 12 and Jeshua 9 got rolled into one character we call Jesus. The Templar strains came out of the Essenes and a couple other strains. They were actually the birth lines from the Jeshua 9 lineage. And then there were other lines coming out of the Jeshua 12 lineage. And I know a couple of those. I'm not allowed to name them. Is that
I
helpful?
think that answered it for you. Thank you.
There's another-
Sure.